This is a very special VVRN video transmission. This is Operation Blanket Hill, a VVAW action in Ohio country in support of the student-sponsored 20th annual commemoration of the Kent State and Jackson State murders. VVAW recon teams have been conducting missions in the area for months, and on April the 3rd, 1990, the organization's mobile units rolled into Kent, Ohio, and established Firebase Carmody. Bill Davis, one of VVAW's national coordinators, told VVRN why this mission was so important to him personally and to VVAW as an organization.
Vietnam Veterans Against the War was already an active organization in the Kent State area when students were killed and wounded. I was stationed at the time just about 100 miles south, 150 miles south of Kent State at Rickenbacker, which was at that time Lockbourne Air Force Base. And I just came back from 2 years in Asia, a year in Vietnam and a year in Thailand. And just emotionally overrun and overwrought by it, and basically made very angry to the point I was almost in a rage because of what had been done in Kent. I was familiar with the area, and I knew the history and the record of the Ohio National Guard and the governor at the time, and they just had no credibility. And to do something like this to these kids was something that I just couldn't come to grips with, why anybody would want to do this. Then, obviously, it became, they were out there crushing the anti-war movement, particularly the movement against the U.S. invasion of Cambodia. But that got me started in VVAW, and that was also my historic link with Kent State. The 20 years that they've had the anniversaries here of the killing, I believe I've been here to 12, maybe 13 of them. Generally, it's like it was today. It rains, but occasionally you get a nice time. But it's such a solemn thing in a way that the rain usually contributes to the general mood of the thing anyway. I was longtime friends with the Kent State chapter here. I was with Vietnam Veterans Against the War in Columbus, where I joined while I was still on active duty. And coming to Kent, you think that after a while you become desensitized to the issue and everything, but it was such a tragic and sad thing, and such an outright crime, the murder of these kids, that it's something that still grips you when you're here. I feel a great affinity here to Kent State. We called this Operation Blanket Hill this trip here in 1990. And also named the hotel we were staying at Firebase Carmody, and that was for a man who was a very good friend of mine, Michael Carmody, who died just last year from very strange forms of cancer, which he felt and we felt was attributable to herbicide exposure. And he was a stalwart here in the chapter. Maybe not the best guy, but he was a regular guy, and he's the kind of guy we miss as time goes on. It's difficult to come to Kent State and not see him around. Saw him all those years.
We asked Bill if the murders of the students at Kent and Jackson State weren't glaring examples of American injustice.
Oh, sure. Well, you can particularize it right down here in Portage County. This is a very conservative area. Kent State is predominantly a commuter college in an area here between Cleveland and Akron. It is it's a working class base of the students, but it's also a situation where it's a very conservative area surrounding the school, and what they did was basically shoot these kids, and then they got a bunch of grand juries, and the first thing they did was let all the National Guardsmen off the hook, and then they indicted students, even some of the students who've been wounded, 25 people, students and faculty, for God knows what kind of crimes. And these particular crimes, the amazing thing about it is they didn't shoot anyone. It was the National Guard that shot everyone, and they all walked free. And eventually, these people walked free. I don't think some of the parents and friends and family of the students who were killed and wounded are still quite satisfied with the treatment they got and what they got today either. And the mood of the country was also one of the Nixon administration at that time in history was actively pushing what this is the enemy within, and we have to crush them. And they'd done it through their very, armed naked force was only one way of doing it. They'd established themselves pretty much also through the committee to re-elect the president, and they were doing a lot of pretty strange things. His internal security and the way that he was manipulating security agencies of this country. Sometimes he was paying more attention to what he perceived were the enemies within the country than he was to what was actually going on in Vietnam. He put that in the hands of a whole other incompetent group of people, apparently.
On the night of April the 3rd, another of VVAW's national coordinators, John Lindquist, conducted an operational briefing in a dimly lit bunker at Firebase Carmody.
Okay, I want to take you down to right now at the 9:30 meeting. All the stuff with the advanced teamwork and whatnot. Come in. Tonight we're going to leave here. First trip at 10:20. Next one about 10:35. If you look on your map. Take a look at the area that says Commons. And right off the sea, you'll see that looks like an extension of a parking lot behind the power plant, the heating plant there. All right, basically the van is going to be taking you right to there. The handicap walk place there. You're about 70 yards away from the 70 yards away from the bell. There's a bell on campus on the Commons. And that's where the vigil is going to be starting from. The march. The march starts at that point, and it's going to march west towards the Inn of Kent. You see the Inn of Kent towards your top left-hand corner of your map there?
Where the march starts for the vigil.
Now, we don't have to lead the march. We're just following in. It's silent. No banners, no picket signs. Silent. It's behind 4 students with 4 candles. They're going to split the difference there between the heating plant going right over between the buildings. So you see Hillside Drive there, a little horseshoe road. You're going to bear to the left and come over to the west edge of campus there. Come down to the corner of Lincoln, which is right down here, right where you see the Inn of Kent. Basically 2 blocks away from there. They're going to turn right and come continuing along the sidewalk, I believe. Might even be the street, who knows. Passed all the way to the very end of campus there. You see that last street that's pulling into that parking lot? A right turn? You're going to come around through there, and as you see on the map where it's marked Vigil, you're going to snake through campus right to the Vigil site. When you get there, they're going to
I'd rather, if you have any voice in it.
The left end of the parking lot there next to Taylor Hall is like almost looks like a tombstone. It's got the name of the 4 students on there and the wounded students. And they're going to do what they call a Kaddish
if you're not around tonight,
over the memorial, and then they're going to break down to the 4 stations of death.
Oh, that's just something I said.
That's what's. Oh, I thought that was for real.
No, that's just something I made up.
Oh, I thought it sounded good.
Well, we said the stations of the cross at one point, and everybody went, oh, yeah, right, sure.
They'll break down to the 4 stations, and we occupy a small island just before Midway Drive there. It'll be real easy to spot. It's the only one with a tree on it. We'll be standing there. Can you reach behind you? Next, there should be a, no, not that one, that banner right there.
Yes, that's the one.
Give me that. 4 from 4, Gary.
Sure.
Hi, Gary, I'm Jim. You look familiar. I wonder why.
Yeah, the family resemblance.
I have no idea.
We got
Maybe I've seen you marching somewhere.
No, this will be on 2 8-foot stakes. It'll be the only thing there, because they didn't bring the upside-down rifle with the helmet on top. They got messed over at the last minute, and it's not. That's beyond their control, because that's the artist. But we got the world's greatest banner here, and we're also bringing along a new New York banner. And if if Dr. J says we can use that one, we can use that one. But we had originally went with this one because he liked the smallness of it. They do not have any banners or picket signs on the thing, and it's just like he's saying, we're on the march at the thing during the vigil. A good portion of us are going to either be at the march or the start of the vigil itself. Realistically, unless everybody in this room and the 31 people are approximately 20-some people over at Kiva, say, well, we can man that all night. I don't see us manning it all night. Most of us have driven all day or all night, and then we're up all day. But there's just no way we're going to do all night and all day tomorrow. So I say I want to get some feedback from the group. I say that we should participate in the march and the start of the vigil, do about an hour, and then come home and go to bed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we have to do. I mean, if you want to take shifts and be up all night, I know I won't be there because I'm going to fall over.
And he's going to march and do all. He's the CO for tomorrow.
So, what's people's feedback on that, please?
Who wants to work on actually do the vigil? See, I can't do the march. So, well, Jesse and I were going to go over there and do the first 45 minutes to an hour of the vigil.
I was going to do 45 minutes to an hour too. And I think if
what, at midnight?
Yeah, I think if we all could, if we weren't able to hold an extended vigil, we had a large vigil for an hour.
Yeah, if we had a lot of people for an hour or so, that would do it. That's all I'll ask. Because we have to meet here tomorrow morning. We are stepping off to go to the campus at 8:30, so you got to keep that in mind too. We have to get up.
We are stepping off at 8:30. All right, we have one person who said he'll come back in the morning. Looking around the room here.
Well, I think though that in terms of the thing, if you're talking about 8 hours, there's 8 hours from midnight to 8, okay? You know, like if you had, with the number of people, you could do 4 for an hour, but I don't think it's worth going all night. I think it's lousy weather, you know, like if you stay a couple hours, I think we have I think that does what we're trying to do. I mean, I think we'd do better if we do a vigil in the day, but that's not the plan. So, you know, vigiling from 4 till 8, is, you know, I mean, God sees you and that's about it, you know. We should do it for a couple hours with a presence of, I don't even think you need, I mean, you know, if we do it for, say, 3 hour shifts, we could set that up and that was a big problem.
Would you mind if the first hour had more than 4 people?
I don't mind it anyway. I mean, I just think that if we do it like that, we can have it for, let's set a time frame, put people into a schedule, and then 3 hours isn't too much to wait up after the march, you know, people and
it's 3 in the morning.
Well, we can do it 2 then. Two's all right. I mean, I don't even...
That's 2 in the morning.
All right, well, I'm good for 1 in the morning. We got a whole group of people for 1 in the morning.
What about early to have people there whenever everybody else shows up in the morning? Is there anybody willing to get up?
That's what I'm saying. I'd be perfectly willing to go back early, you know, 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, or say,
Okay, we got 1. Basically, you can start with 2 because you got 1 on each end of the banner.
Foolish.
We got another person who come in after we've stopped for a while and come back to the vigil, and he's talking about coming in 6.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You know,
Is there anybody else who doesn't want to do it at midnight that would like to do it at 6?
I'll do it with him.
All right. Now, what it looks like we got here is an hour in the beginning and 2 hours at the end of the vigil. What do you think? Let's have some feedback.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. What do you think? Them students are going to stay all night, right?
Yeah. Well, Dr. J says I don't stay all night.
He hasn't made it all night in 19 years.
Like we bounce it off him. And he said, hey, I know how long you guys travel. It's not a slate. You do what you can do. we're glad you're here, yada yada. So that made us feel more comfortable. We didn't want to seem like a bunch of wimps or nothing. But
Yeah, well, let's do it for an hour at the beginning and an hour at the end. That sounds good, right? That sounds good.
No, we're no longer wimps.
All right,
40-year-old wuss.
Well, you guys, if you guys don't want to go back to the line, hit me before we, break up or whatever. We'll talk about it. Maybe we'll go over together or something like that.
Okay, after the march,
Davis will go with you.
we're going to vigil for an hour and go, and then I'm going to turn the flag and poles over to John, and he's going to take, so far, him and Bill tomorrow morning at, am I correct, 7 to 8?
I think we'll probably earlier. Maybe leave here like 6-ish or so.
All right, they're going to do it between somewhere around the hours of 6 to 8. Fine. And then you'll be back, because we'll need that banner for the march anyways. You see the first intersection was Lincoln, just beyond, just next to the ends there on Innikin. Cross was on the sidewalk on the east side of the street. You come down to Hillside Drive there, remaining on the sidewalk, and also is wheelchair accessible. Hilltop, pardon me. And we come around the little curve there, and just as we reach Merrill Hall, come up a strip of sidewalk and cut through the hall the same way we're going tonight, basically. Come right back onto the Commons, where we're marshaling under all the banners. Now, we're urging as many people in VVAW to come and march from point A to point B. Some people won't be able to march, fine. We have a truck with disabled plates. We can put as many people as who couldn't march, slide over there. We got a place for it to park. And we can do that too. Some people might say, well, I'm walking from the university and over there. What we're doing is urging as many people as possible to come here.
Oh, and the people that are at the University Inn should meet, if you're going to march with us onto campus, they should, everybody should be here at 8:30, ready to step up.
We're going to have to tell some folks that some of them are coming over now.
Right now we have
8:30 here, right?
Yeah, we're leaving.
We're leaving here at
All right, so we'll tell them 8 o'clock.
Be here at 8:15.
8:15 would be just fine here.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, we're going to have one of the most colorful banner contingents, but we need a good 10 to 12 people who will start and do that first part of the march,
John, are we
Commons, and carry the banner.
are we meeting the student march someplace?
No, we're marching to the Commons. The thing starts on the Commons, just like it says in the briefing paper, at 9.
The march is later in the afternoon.
The longer march is later in the afternoon. What we're doing is we're going from point A to point B in a flashy manner. It's only about 6 blocks.
In a flashy manner.
Yeah, we'll bring the other ones with us.
Flashy flag.
What we got here, we'll march over with and fly them flags.
Well, what I'm saying here is I'd like to see the ability of, do we have people in this room that want to be each on the end of a pole?
Now, I'm a platoon leader, but I volunteered to carry the VVAW flag for a while because it's got that waist strap.
We could do that.
Barry Cate is a member of the Madison, Wisconsin chapter of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. We asked Barry why it was important for him as an individual and for VVAW to be taking part in the student-sponsored 20th annual commemoration of Kent and Jackson State.
For me as an individual, I didn't really think it, I had it, and there was a degree of importance to it for me, but when I got here and the recollection of what happened here, it's an awesome thing that I had lost touch with the reality of what occurred here and what the repercussions were. And for me personally, it was important to remind me that this incident here at Kent State is probably what saved my life in Vietnam, because it I think, was the real catalyst that created the sentiment that would cause people in this country to cause the government to end the fucking war in Vietnam. For me personally, that's what's significant about Kent State. As an organization, as VVAW, I think it's important that the organization was here because we're against war, we're against oppression, we're against this kind of thing. What this is equivalent to is a death squad. They send people out here, and they sent them out here for a reason. They gave them live ammunition, and they sent them out here to fucking kill people. I think it was a strategic move that they chose Kent State to do it. I think they did it on purpose, and I think it's significant for Vietnam Veterans Against the War, the organization, to have a presence here at Kent on the anniversary and every year.
At 08:15 on the morning of May the 4th, VVAW's new soldiers mustered at Firebase Carmody. Knuckleheads across the street.
Jim, did you bring a knife? Pick your spot and get in town. Once that last banner's ready, we're going to leave out of the parking lot, stay on the, it's a bigger sidewalk. We'll stay in town with food and head on up the road. When we get to that second light, I'll pull you in. We're going to turn right and stay on the left-hand side sidewalk all the way up to the power plant. We're going to split the difference like we did last night right onto the wall. It's about 7 o'clock. From KSU to Vietnam. From KSU to Vietnam. From pepper gas to napalm bombs. From pepper gas to napalm bombs. From Agent Orange to National Guard. From Agent Orange to National Guard.
From overseas to our backyard.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, which one do you want to do? This? You got on program coming up. Yeah. On environmental issues.
From KSU to Vietnam. From KSU to Vietnam. Pepper gas to napalm bombs. From pepper gas to napalm bombs. From Agent Orange to National Guard. Agent Orange to National Guard. Now I got this strange disease. Oh no. 1, 2. Oh no. 3, 4. Bring it on down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't forget that fateful day. I can't forget that fateful day. All right, straight for the victory bell. Straight for the victory bell. All right. Okay, we're going to tighten up. He said, be here by 9, don't be late. Looks like we outnumbered everybody that ain't left the fucking gate. Okay, let's boogie. Forward march. Maybe he'll listen to that one. All right. From KSU to Vietnam. From KSU to Vietnam. From pepper gas to napalm bomb. From pepper gas to napalm bomb. From Agent Orange to National Guard. From Agent Orange to National Guard. From overseas to our backyard. From overseas to our backyard. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. When the guard took aim that day. When the guard took aim that day. All our freedom was taken away. All our freedom was taken away. Is that what we were fighting for? Is that what we were fighting for? All students died to end the war. All students died to end the war. 1, 2.
Jesse Jesperson is an artist who creates beautiful works from stained and cut glass, and a member of the Milwaukee, Wisconsin chapter of VVAW. We asked Jesse why he had volunteered for Operation Blanket Hill.
I think largely because I was in Vietnam when a lot of the student protests were going on back in the States, and had mixed feelings at first, but as my tour of duty in Vietnam went on, I was rather ambivalent before I went, but I became strongly anti-war while in Vietnam. And I didn't have a problem with the students or conscientious objectors. The only people I ever had problems in accepting are the people who just ran away. As I say, I could go on in a very long draft about that, but this is not the place to do that. And when I came back, after my hair grew out, the students were rather accepting of certain things, but it was, hey, an anti-war vet. I mean, everybody wanted to have an anti-war vet to speak at their functions. It added legitimacy. And I was out of Vietnam, I was out of the Marine Corps when students were shot here in Mississippi. And I remember thinking, this is just insanity. We're fighting a war halfway around the world, and yet we'll shoot our own students. We're saying they don't like it. Not to wax philosophically about it, but one of the things we're supposed to be fighting for in Vietnam or any other war is the freedom to say whatever we choose without restraint. Well, for the National Guard to open up on a crowd of students, I mean, why they had live ammunition, I just can't fathom that. I just can't see putting those kind of people in that position, because common sense would tell you the worst they could do is hit you with a rock. And for this, they shot him. That was real wrong. And last night, when we were doing the march, this one kid who was, I think, 19 years old said, well, I'm kind of ambivalent about this. Why should I care? I wasn't even born when this happened. What should it mean to me? He said, well, hopefully it would never happen again. But what it should mean to you is that you better not ever forget it. You better do whatever you can do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And when VVAW decided that we would come down here for Kent State, I thought it'd be a great idea to come along. I haven't been on a large action in a long time. And as I said, I didn't have a problem with students who were anti-war because I was an anti-war GI. How could I have a case against them? I wish they had been as decent about things as I was with them because, as I say, until my hair grew out, there were some pretty bizarre confrontations. And I thought it was kind of funny here. I was more anti-war than any of them ever dreamed of being, because I had seen it and participated in it, and they never took the time to find that out. You were there. And that kind of goes along with, it's just those times they're gone, but then again, are they? I think the government, if pushed far enough, would do it again. I would hope they wouldn't, but I could foresee them doing it. So I have a great empathy for the students, and I met a couple of parents, which was really incredible. They were real thankful that Vietnam veterans cared enough to come down, because comments have been made about, well, it was only 4 students. Wow, 58,000 died in Vietnam. Well, the meter on that keeps ticking, man. There's 120,000 that died back here. Sooner or later, going out of non-vets. And I would hope that we could pass on to the students that they have that right, and that they should exercise that right, and always question the government.
No, I didn't. Yes.
The next one is titled Red and Black. Boom! Flash! And a rat-a-tat-tat. Is this what war is about? Blood, burns, and mangled bodies. Is this what war is about? Pain, pain. All I feel is pain. Head pain, body pain, and soul pain. The world is not black and white. The world is red and black. Red and black, black and red. We are all haunted by the dead. Black is for the charred flesh around the wound. Red is for the blood pouring from the wound. Lose too much and you will be dead. Black is for the smoke from the guns, mortars, and rockets. All these bullets are to make sure someone else is dead. Red is for the explosions that these weapons cause. Now look around, someone else is dead. Black is for the night when we get attacked. Be prepared or you will be dead. Red is for the fear and the hate. When you look around, so many are dead. Red and black, black and red. Life and death, death and life.
Bill Branson is a member of the Chicago, Illinois chapter of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and one of the organization's national staffers. Bill told us his thoughts about the importance of Operation Blanket Hill.
Kent State University has attempted over a long period of time to minimize the significance of the murders at Kent State and what they were all about in the first place, and basically talk, to gloss over everything with some rhetoric about healing, put up a couple pieces of stone that were like was it a quarter to the 7th the size that the original monument was supposed to be, and circumvent the student movement that still exists, of course, into a kind of a moralistic, healing kind of a thing, where now we got the monument so we can forget. And you dudes out there, you students, well, you can just quit having demonstrations here every year, which they've been, for years, they've been trying to stop that. So, with their successive things like building the gym on the site and obscuring a lot of records and fighting tooth and nail against any kind of student protest here. So I think it's important for veterans to be here because of what the kids were out there in the first place for. And they were out protesting against the Vietnam War, and dudes like us were getting killed there. And so it's real important that we're out here to show that veterans, guys that were active duty or just out of the service at that time, were supportive of what the students were doing. In fact, were involved in the struggle, or became involved in the struggle because of the sacrifice of the students being killed. And on the other hand, that the government, that we're aware that as veterans and stuff, that it wasn't any accident those people were shot down. That what was going on in Southeast Asia with, slaughtering and murdering all those people, that was being transferred systematically over here and was basically tried out in Jackson State, Kent State. And what they did was ignite a real prairie fire, a real forest fire. And a lot of guys like myself were teetering, where I was out of the service and really frustrated, intensely frustrated with the military, very opposed to things, and basically opposed to the war, but like, hey, I want to go to school, do something. And when they just shot people down, it was too goddamn much, because I said, well, hey, I know what this means, So I became involved in the peace movement, and a lot of the other guys that were in the local junior college I was in turned out to be vets. And the people there were real friendly. They're the only people I could go and talk to. I couldn't go and talk to the regular students that were not that concerned, and the faculty, etc. We were a pretty strange breed to them. We didn't fit in at all. So when I went to the peace movement, I felt like I had some outlet. And then we organized for Dewey Canyon 3 in California. So it was a real, I wouldn't say it was an inspiration because it was so horrifying. It was like, God, the nightmare is, now it's here. I can't get away from it. I got to do something about it. I'm out of the military, but it's like it's still following me. Fuck it, we went out to kick some butt.
I imagine a world free from all your lies. The cells pull on my feet. Stones to put them there, I don't really know. He puts you down and then he laughs at you. There ain't nothing that you can't really do.
Right now, if I could have Pat, Tom, establish some kind of contact with the May 4th folks over at the tables there. This is Patrick Wright. Please give him your full attention.
Okay, as you may know, we are going to be staging a protest of the memorial dedication. And I'm here to tell you why and how.
Walk up that way. I see the second. She told me one of these portions of one of the store team be up to the front to the right. Because actually I think that in terms of the crowd and stuff, getting really congested in that area, I think that's going to be kind of a dangerous area because there's some block off like a hill. And so you're definitely going to have to stand your ground and be able to attack. Is this a hill?
You'll be forming up positioning people in the order that they're moving. You can
fund the replacement.
All right, what about tungsten?
Oh, okay. And you can stand.
Look exceptionally bright.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you.
That's your band.
Friend of mine.
By all means. Maybe if they do a diet.
One out there.
We finally just turned the lights off.
Then are the piece for him. Then as soon as our split up, she goes. She also.
And then we'll walk up the hill and take our spot. Oh.
Walk behind Taylor Hall, and as this crowd over here, which has been walking at the same time up the hill, they'll meet at that corner, and then go around Taylor Hall, and we'll go down towards the crowd and stand on Taylor Hill and let the nation know that we are standing in protest. But it will be silent, because that signifies today, between 11 and noon and during the visual, silence is the only dignity that will serve justice. And the wounded students that are here today, and I want to point out, the vast majority of them will not participate in the program at the university at the top of the hill. The majority of the wounded students are boycotting.
You might be in the way. There's going to be a march coming up here in about 2 minutes. Coming right up here.
So don't be misled by the fact that a small minority will participate. Overall, we are not satisfied, and we're going to push on and join with the students to reopen the memorial process. Thanks for joining in the protest today. Thank you very much. Come to the rally afterwards, and there'll be a march through the streets at 3 o'clock, so stick around all day.
Posteriority.
Excuse me, we're coming up this hill, so you probably would want to move to the sides or go back up the
VVAW member Elroy Schultz is from Wisconsin. We asked Elroy why he had volunteered for Operation Blanket Hill.
Well, when I got back from Vietnam, I didn't get involved in anything. First year, I just stayed out of sight. I literally stayed in the woods. And I just didn't get involved in anything. I just blanked it all out, didn't watch any television, didn't listen to any radio. I didn't hear about Vietnam, didn't hear about campuses, nothing. So I didn't even know Kent State happened until maybe a few years ago. For my healing process, for my PTSD is what I'm here for. I guess some people could call that selfish, but I needed to commemorate what happened here. And I needed to
give my sympathy to the people's families that have been there.
Dennis Crow is coordinator of the Madison, Wisconsin chapter of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and was in Southeast Asia in May of 1970. Dennis told VVRN how the news about the Kent State and Jackson State murders affected him and his squad.
Well, on a personal level, I was in Vietnam in May of 1970. I know for a fact I was in Laos because we couldn't have flown that far west without being in Laos. I recall coming back into Vietnamese territory, getting resupplied, getting some hometown newspapers. You know, all the headlines were, you know, U.S. denies troops being in Laos or Cambodia. A couple days later, the newspapers were talking about Kent State. It was a shock to all of us. I know I was thinking, you know, here I am, I'm fighting for these rights that they were shooting people in the United States for. So it was a big turning point. In a way, a lot of the people in my squad, at least, thought about the Vietnam War and what we were doing.
Today marks the 20th anniversary of the most famous anti-war protest of all, Kent State. Marty Lannis reports.
Kent
State, 12:24 this afternoon. Kent State, 12:24, 20 years ago. Few images have lingered so long on our national conscience. College students protesting the U.S. invasion of Cambodia were fired upon by National Guardsmen called in to quell violence. They first fired tear gas, then bullets. When the smoke cleared, 4 students were dead, 9 wounded.
Kent State galvanized my feelings, and I decided I had to do something.
The date has been seized upon by some veterans groups as well, particularly the ones considered radical VVAW, Vietnam Vets Against the War. 3 months before Kent State, Wayne Picer had returned to Kansas City from a year tour of Nam. He first heard the news on television that night.
Well, it was appalling to think that we could actually kill our own citizens.
Having left gung-ho, he had returned gun-shy. He is terse on the topic of Vietnam, not of conviction, of necessity. He still has a hard time talking about it.
I, after the war ended, went out and lived in the woods for 10 years because I couldn't handle how our society was and how they felt. I have to live with the memories of the people that I killed, and it's just not an easy thing.
Nothing about the era was easy. Student, fighting man, citizen. What happened 20 years ago was wrenching. There are daffodils here now to commemorate those who died in the war, those who protested, died in as well. Marty Lonis, KCTV 5 News.
Picer was one who stayed behind. The local chapter of the Vietnam Veterans Against the War sent a group to Kent State for today's ceremonies.
We'd like to end this very special VVRN video transmission with these words from VVAW brother Barry Cate.
I like to tell people who ask me questions when they talk to me about my experiences in Vietnam and things like that, the war and the anti-war movement, anything to do with what we're discussing, I always have to say, I'm forced and compelled to say that what you need to do is to teach peace, not war. Teach love, not hate. That's what you need to do. Do that every moment of your life. That's what I need to say. That's what I say. That's what I mean, and that's what people need to do. Don't teach hate and don't teach war. Teach love and teach peace. That's it.
Come on, people now. Come on, brother, everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Come on, people now. Come on, brother, everybody get together.
Not long before the 20th annual commemoration of the murders of the students at Kent and Jackson State, this man, His Imperialist Majesty George Bush, shown here with his pet monkey on the left, told the American people that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, and I quote, that no great nation can be put asunder by a memory, end quote. We asked some VVAW members what they thought about that.
President of the United States, George Bush, has said that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, quote, that no nation can be put asunder by a memory, unquote. Is that the final lesson of the Vietnam War?
I don't think there will be any final lessons of the Vietnam War anymore until wars are abolished. I think the lessons of the Vietnam War is that we can't forgive and we can't forget. And we have to constantly be alert to what our country, our government is doing.
President George Bush has said that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, quote, that no great nation can be put asunder by a memory, unquote. Is that the final lesson of the Vietnam War?
Well, I guess for some people you could say it is, because nobody's ever still learned that fucking lesson. You know, and if that philosophy is still intact today in our policymakers, they can still make speeches like that, and the general public will believe it, because nobody's ever called them up on the carpet for this shit, except the VVAW and other groups. Final lesson in the war is this time I'd start a convoy to Canada for the kids, because they'd get fucked just like we got fucked. Just like the vets in World War II and Korea and World War I got fucked.
President George Bush has said that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, quote, that no nation can be put asunder by a memory, unquote. Is that the final lesson of the Vietnam War?
For somebody like George Bush and Dan Quayle, my own feelings on that, that statement shows such ignorance and insensitivity to a fairly large group of guys who did what their country asked them. We didn't run away. We went and we did it, and then we came home and told people, George Bush's military experience was obviously a lot different than mine was, because I still wake up in the middle of the night screaming over memories, and it's torn my life asunder, and it has torn this country asunder, and that is something that is never going to change as long as we're still alive, because we're not going to let it happen. And I do support the spirit that was meant in. It's strictly the content I have objection to, because it would be nice to basically have a big reconciliation, and everybody kind of get back together again. But that's one of the problems, the memory of Vietnam. We won't do it. And I really thought he was more intelligent than to make a statement like that, so it's obvious somebody else wrote it for him.
President George Bush has stated that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, quote, that no great nation can be put asunder by a memory, unquote. Is that the final lesson of the Vietnam War?
Well, I think George Bush is a little bit off target if he thinks that what happened here at Kent State, and the continuing way in which the United States comports itself, and the way that they remain, with the Soviet Union in a definite decline period here, they become the major interventionist state in the whole world, and I don't see how it's a living memory what happened at Kent, and what they've done in a number of other countries and things, and it fits very well into their overall scheme of now that they've got the main problem out of the way of the Soviet Union, they can start suppressing the third world to meet all their needs also, and become the remaining imperial power of the world. And I don't think the third world countries are going to accept it, but the U.S. is sure changing its military ways around to the point where that's what they're looking at, is domination of the third world now.
We're going to have a million college students ask you to define for them what maybe are 2 or 3 of the primary lessons that upcoming generations should learn from our experience as Vietnam veterans.
What might those be?
Well, obviously one thing is that sometimes your government will go to any length to try to accomplish their means. They'll say that it's national policy or it's foreign policy, but it's not necessarily the policy of the people that have to fight the wars. The people that they use in these things and you know, the various conflicts and everything are expendable to them, and those kind of people are you and I. The war makers and the heartbreakers are the people who profit from these things, and people have to, the first main thing I'd say is people have to make the distinction in whose interest these things are being done. By and large, it's not being done in the interest of the people that have to fight it or the people who you're going to fight, but it is being done in the interest of the people who are sending you there for the most part.
No nation can be put asunder by a memory. No nation can be put asunder by a memory. No nation can be put asunder by a memory. I'd never heard of that he had said that until you mentioned it to me. I got to think about that. No nation can be put asunder by a memory. And that's the lesson of the Vietnam War.
The final lesson.
The final lesson. I think he's fucking crazy. I think he's crazy. I can't believe that can't be the case. No, that's not the final lesson of the Vietnam War. The final lesson of the Vietnam War is that there should be no war. That is the lesson of the Vietnam War, and that's the lesson of every war that preceded it. And it's fucking incredible to me that there's still war that exists. People tolerate. I can't. Once I became aware of what war was, I couldn't believe that it existed. I couldn't. I just about went fucking crazy. And the lesson of the Vietnam War is that there should be no war. None.
President George Bush has said that the final lesson of the Vietnam War is, quote, that no great nation can be put asunder by a memory, unquote. Is that the final lesson of the Vietnam War?
Well, his definition of a great nation is one that dominates the world. I think, George Bush's actions speak for themselves. You can talk all day about what he is, but he basically is a mouthpiece of the CIA. And no great... I really am disgusted with this kind of things they're putting out about healing and all this crap about the Vietnam War. It caused a division in society, and we really have to patch that up and reunify. Reunify for what? Heal things for what? The memories that people have of the terrible things in the war that happened here, over there, the terrorism of the U.S. government, those are important things to keep alive. And I think that the last thing we want is a united bunch of people with, sitting in front of their television sets and with no memory. The worst, the government's attempts to change the whole history of the Vietnam War, and to me that quote just speaks of that, reeks of it. Now they're even, they've changed battles, and we've got these old generals that caused thousands of casualties, and lied, like Westmoreland, who we intensely hated, and then everybody else hated too, but some of the vets won't admit it anymore. Running around telling us how we won battles and we lost and stuff. And who the fuck is George Bush to be summing up the Vietnam War? Where the fuck was he? The guys that knew whether... there's these famous quotes about, you want to know what war's all about, ask the infantry and ask the dead. Well, he wasn't out there. What'd he do, fuck around on a submarine or something? Wow, I'm really impressed. I wasn't out in the field, but I could certainly speak with more authority than that asshole. Or anybody else that wants to send kids off to get dismembered mentally, physically. It's an intense affront. What do they want to, unify people? They're going to unify the people that are fucking living under bridges, you know, and the guys that are fucking sitting there quivering every fucking night, you know, in some hole and trembling on the edge of blowing their brains out, the people that have been dispossessed, the kids that are out there now, you know, that are afraid to even fucking do a little protest on their campus because of the fucking kind of intense repression that they're facing. The police state atmosphere like here at Kent State. That's the kind of thing he's talking. It's kind of like the unity of the Third Reich. Fuck that. That's not what I remember about the war. And when I talk to other people, you know, in the place I worked and everything, they don't think, nobody thinks of it like that. The government wants us to forget all of that. But people have a feeling that something was really wrong. I mean, at a basic level, they know something was wrong. Now, they got a lot of different opinions of what that was. But they don't, nobody thinks the Vietnam War was such a great goddamn thing, except politicians who stand to gain something by, you know, for future actions, to get youth out there to do. We were talking about the potential invasion of Panama or something. It's patriotism and that hype that gets people there. But it's sure as shit only thing is survival and protecting your buddies that keeps you there. And then after a while that wears off and you start thinking, why should I be fighting? That's what happened in Vietnam, and that's what the fuck's gonna happen any place.